My fellow Americans, I'm pleased to tell you today that I've signed legislation that will outlaw Russia forever. We begin bombing in 5 minutes.
It is essential that our team learns to work with our new recruit, not against him.
I'm a geek, walking down the street.
Check the computer.
The mainframe computer.
I access the mainframe.
At the end of this day, one shall stand, one shall fall. Time to find out.
Welcome to Basically a Geek Show. Here are your hosts, Mike and Jack.
And welcome, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, to the 8th wonder of the world, the 6th episode of Basically a Geek Show. I'm Mike.
The show that your mother warned you about, and this is Jack.
And we're here to talk, well, I guess we're going to start off with The Amazing Spider-Man 2.
Yeah, it's kind of like if you have a Band-Aid on your nuts and you need to remove it. So we're going to start with this right off the bat, I guess.
Now, I before we jump into what we know about The Amazing Spider-Man 2, I think we should at least give an impression of what we thought of the first Amazing Spider-Man, that being the controversial reboot of the Sam Raimi series. I saw it. I'm not, full disclaimer, I'm not a Spider-Man fan, and aside from William Dafoe as the Green Goblin, the Sam Raimi series did absolutely nothing for me. So I thoroughly enjoyed The Amazing Spider-Man 2. I thought it was much better than any one of the Raimi films. That's my opinion. You?
I liked it, and, you know, I don't have the hard-on for Willem Dafoe that you have. I mean, he's a great actor and everything, but...
he was so cheesy. I couldn't help but love him.
Right. Okay, so while you think about Willem Dafoe's cheese, I shall continue.
Okay.
But, yeah, so I thought it was definitely better than any one of those turds that Raimi put out. And, yeah, I thought it was good. You know.
Okay. So, and yes, turd is exactly how I'd use to describe the Raimi films. They were borderline when they came out, and they have not aged well. So, I guess, jumping into Amazing Spider-Man 2, your thoughts on the extended trailer that you saw?
Fuck me in the ass.
Oh, not a fan, huh?
Okay, all right. You know, they pretty much, okay, the Electro dude, what the fuck is his name supposed to be?
The actor or the character's name?
The character.
Max.
That's it, just Max.
I don't know his last name. I'm not a I don't read much Spider-Man.
Okay, whatever. That guy.
Yeah.
Electro dude.
Yeah.
So he's all like, you don't remember my name?
Mm-hmm.
Roar, I now hate you forever, blood feud. And I'm like, oh, for the love of fuck, it's Iron Man 3 all over again.
It's Iron Man 3 all over again, but need I remind you that Iron Man 3 ripped off The Incredibles, which ripped off Batman Forever. I don't know if anyone out there remembers Batman Forever. In my opinion, unfairly maligned because Batman and Robin was so bad that the other Schumacher film kind of got lumped in with that. I don't think it was all that bad, but in that film, the Riddler, Edward Nygma, is obsessed. He works for Bruce Wayne, and he's obsessed with Bruce Wayne. He's got, like, his office cubicle covered in newspaper clippings of Bruce Wayne. And then he tries to, pass his latest invention off to Wayne, and Wayne is like, no, you're kind of weird, and I want nothing to do with you. And then, he gets fired. And so, that's what snaps Edward Nygma. And I got the very same feeling when they cut to Jamie Foxx's office or his room or whatever, and it's like covered in newspaper clippings of Spider-Man. I thought, God's sakes, it's Batman Forever all over again. And we just ripped that off of Iron Man 3.
Yeah. So, for anyone out there who wants to become a superhero, just make sure that you fucking take detailed notes of every fucking thing And while you're out there punishing evil, either killing or imprisoning the wicked, don't piss anybody off while you do it.
You know,
like, make sure you tip the fucking pizza dude. Make sure your trash is presented neatly by your curb. Keep your grass mowed. Don't fart in public. Anything like that.
Yeah, it seems the slightest, perceived insult is enough to, catapult someone into supervillaindom.
I don't like his bumper sticker. Arch nemesis.
That'd be hilarious if they ever do Iron Man 4 and like the villain, whoever they end up doing for that, like gets offended by Tony Stark's "honk if you love boobies" bumper sticker.
Yeah, I break for tits. Not on my watch, Mr. Stark. Tonight you will break for my fists.
And hence the origin of Stiltman in the Marvel Universe is explained.
Hi-oh.
Yeah, Stiltman. That's a rant for another time. But, I get what they're going for. I really do. But it was just done with Iron Man 3 to piss poor effect. The Incredibles did it, interestingly enough, I guess. But it comes back, we're ripping off a just slightly okay Joel Schumacher Batman movie. Really? These little perceived personal grudges. I understand that not every villain can be the Machiavellian, mustache-twirling, my plans have layers and layers type villain. But, God, more than, I met you once for 30 seconds and you don't remember my name? Yeah. God damn it.
Yeah, it's evidently implied that Spider-Man has like this canned statement that he gives to everybody that he has these momentary brushes with, probably just to save himself from feeling awkward. Mm-hmm. And probably just have something to say. So he's like, you're my eyes and ears out there. And so he's like, oh yeah, I know who you are. You're my eyes and ears. What's my name? Hey, before you start talking like that, you should at least buy me dinner first.
And another thing on Electro, and again, I don't read much Spider-Man, and Electro, from what I understand, is kind of a second-tier villain anyway, so he's not really featured in the Spider-Man I have read. So I'm not sure what his origin story is in the comic books. I don't know. I'm sure someone more informed could probably tell me. But in the movie, in this trailer, it's implied that he falls into a vat of electric eels, and then he gets electric powers. And, who would have thunk?
He falls into a vat of electric eels, and this somehow causes a blackout across all of Manhattan.
It causes a blackout across Manhattan, and, who would have thought that instead of, dying from all that electricity or put into shock from all the pain, that, just gives you electric superpowers.
Yeah, fucking totally.
Now, I also wanted to touch, we see two more villains. We see the Green Goblin. Harry Osborn is apparently going to become the Green Goblin, and no, that's not a spoiler. You from what you briefly see in the trailer, and you can find stills easily enough online, that is clearly Harry Osborn as the Green Goblin. They don't even give him a mask. And we also get a brief glimpse of Rhino. Of course, in the comics, he's a big, strong guy in kind of like a Rhino-themed spandex suit. Here, it looks like he's just a guy in kind of a Rhino-themed mech.
So fuck for that.
So I take it you're not looking forward to seeing Robotech Rhino?
Well, no, I was saying thank fuck because I don't want to see some dude run around with some Rhino dude run around in a fucking spandex suit.
Yeah.
God, what the fuck? And I gotta address Harry Osborn right the fuck now.
Mm-hmm.
How much of a fucking douche nozzle does he look like?
He looks pretty douchey.
He makes Joffrey look good.
He does kind of. He gives off a very. If you wanted to picture the stereotypical spoiled rich kid from the Northeast, that's basically who they cast.
I think that's insulting stereotypical rich kids from the Northeast. I really think it's that bad. It's that level of douchebaggery. I mean, this little fucking shit-soaked cunt sponge he's just seething with emo douchiness.
Emo douchiness and daddy issues.
Well, that kind of fits in with emo douchiness, wouldn't you say?
Mm-hmm. There's another trailer, not the one we watched before this, but there's another trailer out there where Harry kind of does a voiceover and he says, like, my father spent more time watching you than me, and I have a feeling that's gonna turn into a Daddy didn't love me, so now I'm the Green Goblin origin, and God.
Okay, if he's making a statement, my dad watched you more than me, that asks quite a few questions about his father that I may not want to hear answered.
Norman Osborn, not exactly, the straight shooting cat, but, that at this point, maybe starting to deviate into burnt out Deviantville, just a bit.
Yeah. Fucking outside Parker's window. I'm watching you. Yes. Yes.
Shirtless, nipples pressed up against the glass.
Yeah. I see your underoos. Yes. This pleases me.
God damn it.
Me Uncle Norm. The fuck?
But, I mean, this kind of does raise a question, and we've talked about it in a few movies. It seems to be becoming a trend. Batman and Superman, obviously, we seem to have superhero overload. Batman, Superman, then we've got rumors of The Flash, Aquaman, and Wonder Woman. Then we move to Avengers 2, and we're worried that the additional Avengers that they'll be introducing in that movie might make things a bit complicated and crowded. And now we've got a Spider-Man movie where we have 3 villains. It looks like we have Rhino, Green Goblin, Electro, but on top of that, we also have mysterious Shadow Guy, who's briefly seen walking past the Vulture's wings and Dr. Octopus's mechanical arms, and of course, mysterious Shadow Guy himself from the first movie. So I'm not expecting the Vulture or Dr. Octopus to show up here. I think those are just kind of foreshadowing for future movies, but it seems like we've got a lot going on inside, and I know the tagline for this is Enemies Unite, but I have to ask, are we in danger of kind of character overload again?
Yes. I think this genre is in a bubble, and it's just about to pop. I kind of look at it from the same mentality of porn.
Mm-hmm.
Okay?
Okay.
You start off, when you're like 12, beating off to a fucking JCPenney catalog, or the modern equivalent online. And then, along comes the internet, and before you know it, you gotta have a fucking, Brazilian midget vomiting on you while you stick your finger up a fucking gazelle's ass. And we're at that point. It's taking more and more to get the audience off on these hero movies, and they keep throwing more and more shit in them to where now it's actually becoming self-parody.
I mean,
and it's a bubble, and it's going to break soon.
I in my opinion, the best balance is 1 hero, 2 villains. The Nolan Batman series did this perfectly, at least for the first 2 films. In the first one, you had Ra's al Ghul and Scarecrow. And of course, and then you had Carmine Falcone and the gangsters, but they were kind of just a story element. They really weren't a focal point of the villainy. And then you moved to The Dark Knight, and you had the Joker and Two-Face. And then they got a bit complicated with The Dark Knight Rises, where, Catwoman was first a villain, then a hero, and then you had Bane and Ra's al Ghul's daughter. The name just fucking blanked on me there. I apologize. But so things got a bit more complicated in The Dark Knight Rises. But for the first 2 Nolan Batman films, the hero to villain ratio was pretty good. It hit a good sweet spot. Avengers obviously is a different animal altogether, because the whole point of Avengers is heroes teaming up. But I thought they did a good job balancing all the heroes in that film.
Yeah.
Spider-Man, I mean, I liked The Amazing Spider-Man 1. I liked the first one. But, again, that only really had one villain, the Lizard, Dr. Connors. So, I'm not sure how this is going to work, how they're going to fit in 3 villains. My initial thought would be that, the Green Goblin would be the mastermind villain, and then Electro would be, like, the muscle. Like, the kind of the dumb guy that he can sort of manipulate. But then you have Rhino, who's got, like, a robotic mech suit. So you'd think that Rhino would be the muscle in that equation. So I don't know.
Maybe they don't either. I think they almost just, like, fucking spin a wheel to decide who the villains are going to be these days.
That would explain Sandman's presence in Spider-Man 3.
No, it wouldn't. Sam Raimi being an idiot would explain Sandman in Spider-Man 3.
God, who thought that was a good idea?
Fuck, I don't know. But it's at that point where they keep throwing shit in there, and they're spending less and less time having it try to make any kind of sense, and they're spending more and more time trying to bring that shock and awe factor, like, oh my god, I don't believe they've got so much whatever, villains, explosions, coke-fueled prostitutes, whatever it is, oh my god. And it's getting to be overkill. And it's at the point of self-parody, and I say probably, I mean, they're going to run their course with their planned trilogies and all that shit. So you'll see a Spider-Man 3 and
I've heard they've got 6 planned for Spider-Man. I've heard 6, yes.
Wow, they're ambitious. So I mean, they'll finish what they've got, in the dry dock, so to speak, probably. But I don't see much more coming after this because I think we're about getting that point of saturation to where people are just going to start losing interest.
And yeah, and I said that when I heard that Marvel was making an Ant-Man and Guardians of the Galaxy, both of those films, because I read Marvel, and I can't be arsed to care about Guardians of the Galaxy or Ant-Man. So when I heard that they were making movies, I was like, will the average film goer who is probably not familiar with the Marvel universe, will they care about Guardians of the Galaxy and Ant-Man?
From that perspective, which I actually do possess, I would say Guardians of the Galaxy maybe. Because that's that's almost being portrayed as kind of like the fun buddy cop movie kind of a thing. Just with more buddies. Giggity. But you've got Ant-Man. Seriously?
His superpower is that he's small.
Well, so was mine, and that just gets me laughed at in bed. They don't make a movie about it. What the fuck?
The sad thing is, at least one penis joke is going to be made in that movie.
There had better be at least one. At least give me something. The sad thing is it probably won't even be a funny one. Ant-Man just, God, I don't fucking know.
Alright, well, moving on from the Marvel Cinematic Universe, we're gonna touch briefly on the latest, BotCon reveal.
Yes, Kmart Cyclonus.
Yes, I am looking up his name right now, it's one I'm not familiar with, but while I pull that up, I just want to say,
pull that up?
I just want to say on this, my biggest problem, I would have liked to see a knight, because I'm really interested to see these Autobot knights, because the idea of Autobot paladins is getting me really excited in all ways.
One shall rise, and then...
Yeah.
Okay.
So I was a bit disappointed that we got another, pirate instead. But, okay, the color scheme, because even though the name escapes me at the moment, his bio basically says that he was a Decepticon who decided to then join the pirates. The Star Seekers is what they're calling these pirates.
Looks like his name is Ferrak.
Okay, yeah, he's a member of Squadron X from the IDW comic books from Last Stand of the Wreckers. Okay.
Ooh,
okay.
Squadron X. That sounds...
They're the Decepticon version of the Wreckers, which is kind of funny because the whole point of the Wreckers is that they don't play by the rules, and I find it hard to believe that the Decepticons have very many rules and regulations.
Right. Yeah.
So, like, what exactly, is...
What are the rules that you don't play by?
Yeah. Okay, so... Ferrak, and, he's got a mini-con tornado. So, my issue with this is that I get why the color scheme looks the way it does, because he's not supposed to be a pirate like Cannonball. Okay, Cannonball is obviously a straight-up pirate. But, he's supposed to be a Decepticon who became a pirate, so, obviously, he's not going to, look like a pirate, but at the same time, that means he doesn't look like a pirate. And if you're into the idea of Decepticon pirates, and then this guy comes along, his non-pirate color scheme is gone, I would think would be off-putting, because he doesn't have that sort of, kind of Generation 2 neon-y, thing going for him that Cannonball did. So, it's kind of, and without that pirate theme, without that sort of pirate visual, he honestly comes across as just this generic-looking kind of Transformer. And that's not something that a BotCon set should have. A BotCon has had this problem, sadly, numerous times, where the characters in their sets just kind of look like... They look like adequate retail releases for random repaints, but they don't look like something that someone would want to spend premium top dollar on. And that's what I get with this guy. He just kind of looks generic.
Yeah, he actually looks generic to the point, and that's why I called him Kmart Cyclonus. He looks like Walmart or like Kmart or Target, one of those retail stores that has that generic, red and white color motif going on. Like, hey, let's have an exclusive Transformer to our store, and it'll be in our colors, and it will be this guy, and people will pay for it because they're stupid. And that's pretty much what I get when I look at this. The paint scheme looks really just uninspiring. I mean, I don't know, the fucking pirate emblems on the wing and motor are pretty cool, I guess. And that's really the only thing to identify this guy. That's really the only thing piratey about this guy.
He's got
I loathe.
He's got a Decepticon emblem on his helmet.
Right.
So, I understand why from a fiction standpoint he'd have that, but as a consumer, if I'm someone, and I admit that the whole pirate theme is really not something I'm all that excited about, but if I were into the whole pirate theme, then, I'd want them to go whole hog on these pirates, and this guy just kind of looks like a generic Decepticon who, oh yeah, here are some pirate logos.
I mean, I wouldn't even pay, assuming that this were a retail figure, which is what it looks like, I wouldn't even pay the, $20 or whatever for it in retail.
Mm-hmm.
This is one where if it were on clearance for $10 and it was either that or, the latest Bumblebee redo, then, I'd just say fuck it and go buy booze with the money instead. Yeah. I wouldn't buy it for a retail release.
And, to my chagrin, I just pulled up the BotCon, website, and they've got a neat little graphic where they're going to show, who's going to be unveiled next. It looks like in this entire set, it's a 5-figure set, and we're going to get 3 pirates and 2 knights, which kind of bums me out, because I was looking forward to at least 3 cool-looking knights that would, look awesome as a team.
Yeah.
But we're only going to get 2. And, of course, these aren't the entirety of the BotCon figures. I'm sure we'll have a few knights as the, attendance freebie or, the 2-packs or the 3-packs that they always sell at the convention outside of the box set. But only 2 knights in the box set. I admit I'm a bit disappointed. But here's hoping that in due time, we'll get at least 1 more knight in the next unveil, because that's what I'm excited about. That's what's going to possibly get me to maybe plop down some premium money to get one of these. I want to see a cool knight Autobot. And
let's get to the point. We want to see an Autobot Paladin.
Yes, I want to see an Autobot Paladin, and the first pirate theme one with Cannonball. Okay, I kind of get it. He's a fan favorite. But, I would have rather seen an Autobot Paladin than just, a generic Cyclonus who doesn't really do much for anyone.
Yeah, I mean, there was a lot that they could have done with this figure, and Cyclonus of the season 3 G1 bots, Cyclonus was actually one of my favorites, and at least from a toy standpoint, I had that toy when I was a kid. I fucking loved it, and because I thought it was like the jet mode. I always thought it was really cool, the whole Delta Wing thing going on.
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of hate to have seen them done this, to have seen them do this to Cyclonus, because he's pretty badass, and this is kind of cheap. This is pretty generic.
Have you seen Shattered Glass Cyclonus?
I have not. Give me a second, and I'll meander about the interwebs here, and I'll have it in a second. Why is it worse?
Oh, yes.
Oh, this should be good then.
Yeah,
Oh, for the love of fuck.
Yep.
Hot Rod? Fucking seriously?
Well, it's
fucking Hot Rod.
It's Shattered Glass, right? Everyone's the opposite. So, Cyclonus is the Hot Rod of the Shattered Glass Decepticons.
I guess that makes sense. Just, God damn it.
It better. Yeah.
Now, the art they've got here is kind of cool, I guess.
Mm.
If I didn't know that it was Cyclonus, if they're like, hey, this is the new Autobot, and if Hot Rod didn't exist and they did this, it'd be kind of cool, I guess. But, yeah, fuck.
So, stay tuned for more BotCon coverage as the figures get released. I look forward to a simple black and white repaint of some random Decepticon that will look absolutely uninspired and completely kill the enthusiasm for this Pie vs. Night theme.
I can't wait.
But I believe, moving on to our next subject, we're going to, in the spirit of the glorious Tournament of Victory, we start next week on basically a sports show. We're going to do a little one-on-one debate. Star Trek versus Star Wars is one of those topics, of course, that it's garnered a lot of discussion. So we figured we'd bring it to you guys from the bag's perspective because we're in a unique position to do so. I like both franchises, but I admit I'm more of a Star Wars fan, and Jack here, I know, is a Star Trek fan. So, alright, so on to our next topic. We're gonna debut a new segment here on basically a Geek Show. The Bad Movie Public Defender. So Jack is going to pick some much maligned cinema, and he's going to try to tell us, why these bad movies are in fact good. And I will be there playing devil's advocate, telling him why he is wrong and why these movies get crapped on as they deserve.
And, the first defendant we have here is going to be Battlefield Earth. Now, this is not meant to be an endorsement of Scientology by any stretch of the imagination on my part. I think they're just as fucked up and idiotic as the rest of us do. However, Battlefield Earth, especially when taken into context of the story behind it, the book and everything, and if you know what was left out, Battlefield Earth actually does have a lot of redeeming characteristics. Some of them may be unconventional, granted, but is this the worst movie ever? No, it's not. Is it a bad movie? I would say not, because you can actually sit down and you can have some enjoyment while watching it. And if, you can have some fun while watching it, then it's really not all that bad now, is it?
A fair point to bring up. For some background information, you have read the book that it is based on, correct?
Yes.
And,
yes.
I mean, it's pretty long, so you've read it in its entirety.
Yes.
And you quite enjoyed it, the book.
Yes.
Okay.
I thought it was great.
Okay. And I guess discussing the movie proper, my first criticism of it, it wouldn't be from a storyline perspective. We will get there. But my first criticism is the most obvious to anyone watching this for the first time. All of the weird Dutch angles. Now, for those who are unfamiliar, a Dutch angle is essentially tilting the camera so that the video is, or the movie is filmed kind of on an off-putting angle. It's used a lot in films who want to convey a sort of uneasy feeling. And the general consensus is that a few of these angles in the right place in a well-made movie are welcome. But Battlefield Earth seems to use them almost for the entirety of the film.
And honestly, I mean, to me, this is, the only time I ever noticed it is when you pointed it out to me. And I've watched that movie, I don't know how many dozens of times. Mm-hmm. It was actually the reason I bought my first DVD player back in the 90s. Yes, I'm admitting this on the air because I am that confident this movie is not nearly the steaming shit pile that everybody says it is. Mm-hmm. And I watched it. There were aspects that I was disappointed about, yes, but they're not the things that the movie gets dumped on for.
Okay, so what disappointed you about it?
That there wasn't more of it. That it left.
Your one complaint about Battlefield Earth is you wanted more Battlefield Earth.
Yes, by God, yes, because when you take it into perspective of the book, we're talking 1,000-page book here. Mm-hmm. Okay, easily, maybe more. It might have been like 1,200 or something. I don't know. It's been a few years since I've read it.
It's a pretty thick book.
Yeah, it's a big one. That's what she said. But, yeah, and there was so much that was left out that if included, I think would have maybe not redeemed the movie to a lot of people, but to those of us, me and I believe Ted in Pennsylvania, that liked it, there would be, more there for us.
You guys meet up at the annual Battlefield Earth Appreciation Fan Club?
Yes, we do.
It's you and Ted, and it's a lovely affair from everything I've heard.
Yeah, and if you're listening, hey Ted, how are the wife and kids? But yeah, my first thought when I seen it was, wow, I hope they do a sequel. And
that so wasn't going to happen with those box office returns.
Well, and that just goes to show, okay, take a look here at the movies that are considered appreciated by people. Perfect example, the Oscars.
Okay.
How often does a movie that actually anybody, an average person, mm-hmm. How often does a movie win an Oscar that an average person goes to see? And I'm not talking about best special effects mm-hmm. or best music. I'm talking like best picture or something like that.
I can think of two examples. The first would have been, I can think of three, honestly, because I'm not a fan of Titanic, but a lot of people really love that movie.
Fuck that movie.
So there's that. I'd also say The Departed was pretty popular when it came out, and it won Best Picture. The gangster movie. It's got Leonardo DiCaprio, Mark Wahlberg, Matt Damon, Jack Nicholson.
And three of those four people that you just mentioned are reasons why I would not see that movie. No offense to Mr. Nicholson. Love you to death. But the rest of the four of you are utter shit, and I hate you.
But it was pretty popular, and it won Best Picture. And then the biggest example, I'd say, of Best Picture being a popular movie that the majority of people really wanted to see would be Lord of the Rings, Return of the King.
Okay, now the last one I'll give you is legitimate. Mm-hmm. That one I will concede. The other two, negative. Titanic was a steaming pile.
I don't disagree with you. I'm just saying that a lot of people actually did see it in theaters.
A lot of people seen it in theaters because they got drugged to it. And when I was in the theater watching that movie, I couldn't take it anymore. I was like 2 hours into this fucking abomination, and I just stood up and yelled, "Guess what? The boat sinks!" And I walked out.
I mean,
spoilers!
It is kind of ridiculous that 2 hours into the movie Titanic and we haven't even seen the goddamn iceberg yet.
Yeah, the iceberg is the protagonist. It is the only thing.
The iceberg is the protagonist.
It is the only thing that can end this slow boat ride to fucking hell that all on.
Okay.
Well, that maybe motorboating Kate Winslet, but beyond that, there's nothing there. But yeah, back to Battlefield Earth. You know, I'm using this to illustrate that the movies that are popularly appreciated in culture are often not good. There's, you know, quite a few examples of this, you know, and a lot of times the movies that are considered bad often persevere longer in the pop culture memory than the movies that were considered good for a time, flashes in the pan, you know, whereas, you know, you get movies like, the Godzilla series. Mm-hmm. A lot of people consider it to be low-rate B movies, but they're still going strong. They don't do great at the box office, but they have such a devoted fan base that they're still going.
I'm not going to deny that Battlefield Earth will always be around in the popular consciousness. I'm just not sure it's going to be around in a positive light.
Well, at what point does negative become positive? Because look at Plan 9 from Outer Space.
That's a fair point, but can you really say that people are seeing the good qualities of the movie if they're primarily watching it to laugh at the bad qualities?
That kind of brings back to what I was saying earlier. If you actually sit and watch a movie and have a good time watching it for whatever reason, you know, I'm not approaching this from the artistic vision of the director or any of that bullshit. I'm just saying at the end of the day, if you sit down and you watch a movie and you have a good time doing it, then it's not bad.
I'm pretty sure the director who they got for Battlefield Earth, it wasn't his vision. This was John Travolta's vision entirely. And on Mr. Travolta, I'm going to address him as perhaps one of the biggest millstones around this film's neck.
How dare you bring the brilliant performance of Mr. Travolta into this? I mean... For fuck's sake, the man brought us Saturday Night Fever. That's not the goddamn point. The point is...
Pulp Fiction was good. I like Pulp Fiction.
It was boring. Again, popular movie. Stunk.
I liked it, but...
You just liked it because you like Samuel L. Jackson being Samuel L. Jackson.
That's that's why I liked RoboCop.
Well, yeah, but, you know...
Okay, but point being, John Travolta, in this movie, to say
awesome.
To say he chews the scenery is an understatement. I don't know what the hell he's doing. But
he is being brilliant.
At the risk of ripping off the Spoony one, while you are still learning how to spell your name, I was being trained to conquer galaxies.
Yes. A line that has been imitated on the internet and that you yourself are now doing. If there's not something there worth imitating, then why are you doing it?
Well, I'm imitating it, but I'm not sure I'm imitating it for, you know, the right reason.
The highest form of flattery, sir. So the person who is telling me that this movie is horrible is actually, you know, the one sitting here imitating it, emulating it even. Trying to aspire to the level of performance that John Travolta gave in that movie. He's the one he's doing the work for me, ladies and gentlemen. You, sir, just got jacked.
Please don't make that a catchphrase.
Just happened. It just fucking happened. That shit just happened.
I'm just saying, it's an incredibly cheesy performance, and when you...
That you played.
When you marry that performance to the makeup they give the Cyclos, I mean, they kind of just, they look, you can't help but laugh.
Because we all know that for a science fiction movie to be good, it has to have the best makeup possible. I mean, look at all of the examples of this. Doctor Who, the first Star Trek series, Star Wars even in some parts.
My point though is that the shoddy makeup work in Doctor Who, Star Trek, Star Wars, you can basically confine that to the early periods from the 60s, 70s, even the 80s. But when it comes to Battlefield Earth, this was made in 2000. You'd think that they would have been able to make them look like something more than, giant Jamaican clowns.
Well, in the book, they're almost kind of like, the impression I got was that they were almost like the Kilrathi from Wing Commander.
Mm-hmm.
And which I know you're probably not too familiar with that franchise.
I'm familiar with the Kilrathi, giant cat people.
Yes, which that's another movie I wouldn't mind defending one day.
Oh, God.
That's right. I just went there. But yeah, so they were kind of portrayed as almost being a little bit like the Kilrathi in the book.
Mm-hmm.
The only thing I can think of is that they decided for their budget that to do that would have involved, of course, CGI at the time was not what it is now. They didn't have the budget of Jurassic Park. And,
Because Spielberg saw the script and said, fuck no.
Well, Spielberg doesn't always know what's best. I mean, look at AI, for example. Just saying.
That was done out of courtesy to his friend Stanley Kubrick.
Well, I get that. But I mean, that's kind of like me saying, that's like if I burnt your house down and afterwards like, you're welcome. So, Spielberg is not infallible. Not saying that the man's not brilliant and talented, he is, but he's not infallible. So, that being said, I think they just kind of went with what they had. I didn't think the makeup was bad. I did not. It simply was what it was, and yeah, the Kiss boots were a little bit much.
Get it? They're tall!
Yeah, pretty much. But humanoids with dopey-looking makeup to make them a little bit alien, that's nothing new.
Mm-hmm.
That's never going away. At least they did something to them, which in a lot of cases is more than what have been done in other franchises. A lot of times you just get a human and like, hey, they're aliens. Really? Oh, yeah, no, fucking totally alien. What? Shut the fuck up, they're aliens.
Yeah, Star Trek has a habit of sticking some Play-Doh on some guy's forehead.
Yeah. And, Star Wars, though, I mean, they fucking... They didn't even do that half the time. I mean...
I don't want to get us into our next segment, but...
No, I know. I'm just saying,
But we will address that in due time. But with... Okay, so I guess my last major point of contention with Battlefield Earth, and this does come from a storyline perspective. Well, there's two major problems I have. The first is that Terrell, the John Travolta's character, or Terrell, he says his plan. The Cyclos have conquered Earth, and humanity just kind of exists in scattered tribes. He's going to take this human, who he's already kind of identified as a, rebellious risk, and he's going to give him all of the information he needs to overthrow the Cyclos. And God damn it, Ernest Stavro Blofeld in Bond movies was never this stupid.
Okay, so let's address that, shall we?
Mm-hmm.
Where you see bad writing, I see a message.
Oh,
I see deep metaphor. I see an insightful warning.
Okay.
Against underestimating your opponent. Look at the U.S. in the war on terror.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of times we did underestimate our opponent, and it cost us years of warfare in Iraq and Afghanistan. Similarly, Terrell underestimated his opponent. This is a human. He's not even barely sentient. It's a dog that I can train tricks. We don't see dogs as very threatening most of the time unless they're chasing us down the road and trying to bite our necks into.
Mm-hmm.
But, it's that same kind of mentality. And it was that level of hubris, of arrogance, of superiority, xenophobia, even perhaps, that, led him to this. And that's the standpoint that the story was coming from. And that Terrell, honestly, is not the brightest bulb on the tree to begin with. He's educated beyond his intelligence, more or less. Mm-hmm. He's, I believe, probably related to someone rich or, son of someone rich. That's explained in the book, I believe, but I don't recall.
Well, obviously
exactly.
Those connections didn't help him because he does not like being on Earth.
No, he doesn't.
But didn't he kind of screw himself there? Like he slept with someone important's daughter or something, and then.
Yeah, he diddled someone he shouldn't have been diddling, and evidently her daddy was someone
important
in high places. Yeah, and things spiral downhill as they so often do when you do that kind of a thing. But that's from a storyline perspective, that's where it's coming from. Mm-hmm. It is an example of arrogance and hubris gone awry when a vastly technologically superior power underestimates their seemingly vastly inferior foe.
Okay. Moving on, my last point, Len. We've got, it is explained that, the Cyclos conquered Earth in 9 minutes.
Yes.
So, fighter jets piloted by trained pilots in the air forces of the world could not stop the Cyclos in 9 minutes. But a group of cavemen flying 1,000-year-old fighter jets that probably haven't been maintained since then can learn how to fly these things over the course of a weekend and fend off the entire Cyclo occupation fleet.
Okay. I welcome the challenge. Uh-huh. The thing is, it's never explained in the movie how the Cyclos conquered Earth in 9 minutes.
Okay.
It is explained in the book.
Okay. I'll
go both routes with this. I'll use a hypothetical alternate scenario that could have been used for the movie, and I'll throw in what was in the book as well. Mm-hmm. Now, I'll start with the book. Okay, in the book, it was chemical weapons, basically. Extremely advanced chemical weapons called gas drones that basically the Cyclos send in to sterilize a planet, eradicate the indigenous population before they, begin their occupation and invasion. And it was these that humanity was unable to stop. Now, keep in mind, this book was written, I believe, in the early 80s. I think like 1982 or 83. We didn't have Patriot missiles then. Mm-hmm. That technology, did not exist. Now, could, L. Dog Hubbard been a little more, foreseeing in that? Maybe. But that really, he was aiming more towards the grand story point. He wasn't trying to be Tom Clancy and get down to the nitty-gritty of technology.
Oh, he was certainly not trying to be Tom Clancy.
No, he wasn't, admittedly. Now, let's just say, for the sake of the movie, they do something different. So you've got in warfare, when you're invading an opponent, you have an invasion force, which is usually overwhelming power. You throw everything you've got to secure a landing point, whatever, and then secure the rest of the area that you wish to take, in this case, an entire planet. Now, this movie takes place, hundreds of years, thousands of years.
1,000 years after.
Yeah, 1,000 years after the initial invasion and occupation of Earth. This is not the entire Cyclo army that these guys are fighting. This is a token force, mostly bureaucratic, that's left behind. They don't view humanity as any threat because they're all fucking in the mountains and all these other places the Cyclos can't get to because of radiation and all that other shit. So these cavemen aren't taking down the entire Cyclo army, with weapons that failed the first time. They're taking down a token force, mostly a bureaucratic office to oversee and just, basically milk the planet out of its resources. That's what they're doing. with regards to them learning how to fly Harrier planes over the course of a quote-unquote weekend, it's never really explained how much time is used to gain.
I would gather that it would take quite a long time to train someone who has no experience of technology whatsoever, and then drop them into the cockpit of a Harrier aircraft.
Well, and there is a point to be had with that. But okay, I'll say two things about that. One, how many times in a movie are time frames condensed or exaggerated in order to serve a plot mechanism?
Hey, if I didn't hear Eye of the Tiger, then I can't be sure that a training montage took place.
True. Good point. However, it's not the first time, and it won't be the last time that time itself has been played with to serve a plot device. Mm-hmm. Secondly, you had Johnny Tyler there, who had the advantage of being, super duper educated by the Cyclo's educational devices. So he had a bit of an edge there himself, not just in technology, but also in every aspect, language, communication. He would have been a superior teacher to have worked with these people and possibly have accomplished this. Secondly, they used flight simulators and things like that. Okay, looking at the video game field, computer games, how many of these flight simulators are there that are just super realistic? And when I say that, I mean pretty much like flying the real fucking thing. And yet you can pretty much take a weekend and more or less learn the bare basics of how to do this, of how to pilot these things. Now, we're not saying become a super pilot or anything like that. You're not trying to be Baron von Richthofen here. You're trying to just do what's got to be done. These guys weren't worried about, passing an exam or getting a license or any of that shit. They had no exams. They had no red tape. It was sit down and fucking learn it and just learn the bare basics of how to maneuver the fucking thing and fire the weapons. They probably weren't even all that concerned about fucking landing.
Okay, but one would think, though, that these planes sitting in storage for 1,000 years, the maintenance isn't going to be the best. Yeah,
and that's the first close to valid point you've brought up throughout this entire discussion.
Okay.
And I will counter that by simply saying, one, again, not the first or the last time that something like this has been done.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the impossible happens in movies all the time. That's why we go to see them.
Mm-hmm.
Though, I mean, if we want to try to stretch this into something that could be possible, plausible, if there's airplanes, what else is there going to be? Parts for them. Parts that have in most cases been stored, could quite possibly be usable.
Mm-hmm.
They could have been repaired. Johnny would have had the knowledge to have done that. They had pretty much everything there at their disposal, the schematics, the flight simulators, the parts, everything that they would have needed to, in theory, have done it. And we don't know to what degree these machines would have decayed because we haven't yet left them sitting around for 1,000 years without flying one. So we don't know what state they would be in if left inside of a building and if that building, of course, did not crumble.
Mm-hmm. All right, my final point, and this goes back to, the movie not making clear how the Cyclos invaded. I understand that in the book there is the gas drones, and that does explain how the Cyclos were able to conquer Earth so easily without having to engage Earth's military forces. I understand that. But in terms of Battlefield Earth as a movie, if you don't put something in the movie, then it's not in the movie. It seems obvious, but that's my point here, right. That if you don't if you don't put the gas drone explanation in the movie, then, or if you don't put any explanation in the movie, then that counts against you from a narrative perspective. If you don't tell me how something happened, then I'm going to assume I'm going to assume the worst, essentially. If you don't tell me how the Cyclos invaded, if you don't tell me about the gas drones, if you don't tell me about the overwhelming military force, then I just have to take the movie on what it presents me. And it presents me cavemen flying planes that they probably don't know how to operate all that well, defeating a technologically advanced alien force. And that's where the suspension of disbelief sort of falls apart for me.
Well, the thing is, okay, once again, it is a fairly common plot device for a movie to jump into the middle of a situation. It would have required exposition. There wouldn't have been a way for them to really have explained how it happened in the movie because it takes place 1,000 years later.
But the movie starts with a text scroll. It tells it tells us at the beginning via a text scroll the basic background. Cyclones have invaded Earth. You tell me you couldn't have thrown in a line or two about a gas drone in there?
It would have been an info dump.
Oh, fair enough.
I mean, the point of the movie was to really go into. The movie kind of emulates the book in that sense. It doesn't go into the affair. Mm-hmm. It goes into the story of humanity rising against their oppressors and, expelling them.
Mm-hmm.
And from a narrative standpoint, in the actual movie itself, every human alive in this movie is alive 1,000 years after the fact. They have no goddamn clue what happened.
On that note, I would say there's one thing I really do like. My favorite scene in this movie is the scene where, it's the beginning, where Johnny's trotters are sort of telling the story of Cyclones came. And I liked it because it was a good case of world building. Because the elders are saying that the Cyclones are demons sent by the gods to punish humanity. And, think about it. When Hurricane Katrina happened, you had people saying that it was in response, that it was God's wrath against New Orleans for its wickedness. And whether or not you believe that, and I'm certainly not trying to endorse that opinion, but whether or not you believe it, that was a fairly common sentiment. So, if humanity saw the invasion by the Cyclones as some sort of divine punishment when it first happened, it's not inconceivable that as a polytheistic faith, developed over the 1,000 years since then, that the Cyclones as punishment from the gods would be seen as fairly commonplace. So I will give the movie that. It was a brush with competence.
And also, from a narrative standpoint, the argument could be put forth that, putting the viewer in that place is the same, the same as the protagonist. The same as the human protagonist in the movie. And that is basically immersion. All they know is, hey, these guys are here. You don't like them. They're going to kill us all off. We've got nothing. And that's pretty much what you know, too. You know exactly what the protagonist knows on screen.
Mm-hmm.
So there's no info dumps. There's no, redundant or unnecessary information given. It's basically pure immersion.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Now that is fair enough. So that has been the public movie defender audience. You're the judge. You're the jury on this. So you decide. Is Battlefield Earth guilty or innocent?
Vote for me and I'll show you my wee-wee.
Nobody wants to see that.
Shut up.
All right. Continuing the spirit of hearty debate, and in a show of camaraderie with the glorious Tournament of Victory starting next week on basically a sports show, Jack and I are going to discuss Star Wars versus Star Trek. This is a debate that's been going on pretty much since these two emerged as the two premier science fiction franchises in Western pop culture. You've seen numerous people debate it, either jokingly or serious. Star Trek, Star Wars, which is superior? I've even seen a website, a pro Star Trek website, go into detailed length explaining the frequency and caliber of phaser and laser blasts to determine why Star Trek would emerge superior. And I've got to tip my hat to that person, because that is a level of detail that I would have not even considered going into. But we are uniquely qualified to bring you this debate. I admit I'm a fan of both, but I do prefer Star Wars. And Jack here, I know, doesn't dislike Star Trek by any means, but I know that he doesn't dislike Star Wars by any means. but he is a Star Trek fan through and through. So, I will allow you, Jack, to launch the opening volley in this little engagement of ours.
I present the following for your consideration.
Okay.
James T. motherfucking Kirk.
But don't you say this as a Picard fan?
Yeah, and that should tell you something right there.
Okay, fair enough. James T. Kirk, probably my favorite character from Star Trek. I don't have a problem with Picard myself. I don't want this to turn into a Kirk versus Picard debate. We could probably get there in due time, on another show. But I will say I don't have a problem with Picard. I do prefer Kirk. I very much like his gunslinger mentality. And his ability to kind of play chicken with a world-destroying cloud and get the cloud to blink. That's just pure canned awesome. But against James T. Kirk, I'm not gonna raise Luke Skywalker. I'm gonna raise Han Solo.
Exactly. And Han Solo is a badass. Not denying it.
Mm-hmm.
But, okay. How much of a badass is Han Solo when he keeps getting overshadowed by Luke fucking Skywalker the whole goddamn time? Kirk had no one overshadowing him. He was the motherfucking man. He was out there. He was on the front. He played backup to nobody. He single-handedly saved the world on multiple occasions.
I'd say that Han Solo, I would dispute the notion that he was overshadowed by Luke Skywalker in the first film, considering that he saves Luke's ass at the end. Darth Vader's about to blow Luke out of the sky in that Death Star trench run. And it's not until Han Solo shows up to knock Vader off of his axis that Luke is able to destroy the Death Star. Spoilers! The Death Star gets blown up.
Get the fuck out of here. It does?
Twice, actually.
And, furthermore, Captain Kirk knows the difference between measurements of speed and measurements of distance.
Okay, I will defend that when he says the whole parsec thing in the cantina. Look at who he's dealing with. Obi-Wan Kenobi, some old hermit from desert, and Luke Skywalker, a farm boy. My take on that scene is that Han Solo, hotshot pilot, sees two rubes with a lot of money that he can take advantage of, and he's just throwing out jargon to see if they'll call him on his bullshit.
But as a pilot himself, he should know the proper jargon to be throwing out. If you're going to throw out jargon, why would it matter if it was made up or not? If you're a pilot and as good of one as Han claims to be and demonstrates his capability to be over the course of the first trilogy, then he already knows the proper jargon to use. So it would be second nature for him to have used the correct terminology instead of making something up offhand, which would have taken more thought.
I just maintain that he was like, oh, hey, here's some rubes I can take advantage of. Oh, yeah! My ship can go 100 jelly beans per hour. Yeah! And then, if they don't call him on that, then he knows, okay, I've got some dumb motherfuckers who I can take advantage of.
Okay. Say somehow you have a car in maybe Central Africa or Aboriginal Australia, someplace where there may actually be people who've never seen a car.
Okay.
But they know English somehow, just posing for the sake of argument. Now, they say to you, hey, can you do anything with this thing that you've got? Are you going to say, oh yeah, I can go 12 kilowatts in a mile? Or are you going to say, oh yeah, this fucker will do 100 miles an hour? You're going to say what you know. And if you're piloting a vehicle, you know the speed, you know the units of measurement used in piloting that craft. Which he obviously doesn't if he's saying something like that, even as a ruse to con some schlubs into hitching a ride with him.
Well, yeah, but, I mean, I'd probably use the correct terminology if I was just talking about my car, but, if a bunch of these primitive people needed me and were willing to pay me something of value, then, if I was a scumbag trying to scam them out of some money and make them think Han Solo is a scumbag, at least he starts off with one, then, I might play around with them to see how dumb they are and see how much I can take advantage of them if I was that type of person. I don't see it as out there. I just think he was saying, these people are idiots. Let's see if they'll call me on my bullshit. And they obviously didn't, because Luke's an idiot farm boy, and Obi-Wan, I'm convinced at this point, was suffering from heat stroke.
Okay. So now you're saying that your preferred franchises main characters, one is an asshole, one has Alzheimer's, and one is too young to know anything.
And the first one he is. Luke got significantly smarter by Empire Strikes Back. And that's the thing to realize, that Empire Strikes Back doesn't pick up right when A New Hope ends. Empire Strikes Back takes place a few years later, because by the end of the first one, Vader has engaged in a galaxy-wide manhunt for Luke Skywalker. Luke Skywalker has entrenched himself in the Rebel command structure and is now a high-ranking officer in the Rebel Alliance. So, between the end of A New Hope and the start of Empire Strikes Back, Luke Skywalker did get significantly more intelligent. And yeah, I mean, Obi-Wan Kenobi, it's very obvious by the later years of his life, he was not operating with his full faculties, because he engaged in a witness protection program and used his own last name in his alias. So, it's obvious that as time went on, Obi-Wan was not the Jedi he used to be.
Okay. And though I will give you one thing here. Now, Star Wars does have one thing that Star Trek does not. Incestuous undertones.
That was before they knew that they were brother and sister?
Right. Uh-huh.
They didn't know. Okay, it was before they knew, and Leia only kissed him to make Han jealous.
So she only kissed her brother.
She didn't know he was his brother.
She only kissed her brother to use him as a pawn in her game to get a man who spews incoherent technobabble that he doesn't even understand to people that randomly come up to him and need a ride.
Hey. Don't be playing that technobabble card with me, Mr. Star Trek fan.
And so, therefore, I'm not seeing a lot here of merit. And story-wise for Star Wars, is this not just basically the Arthurian legend kind of just
That's why I like it. That's why I like it, actually. Because I'm a sucker for fantasy literature. I'm a sucker for these old myths. One of my favorite books, still to this day, is Beowulf. I finally decided to read it after I ignored it in high school. Read it in my university years. Absolutely loved it. I love the mythical legend, the mythical hero's journey. And that's why I like Star Wars so much, because, I mean, say what you will about George Lucas, and there's a lot to say, and I won't even attempt to defend the majority of the trilogy, of the prequel trilogies, but at least for the first three, the original trilogy, he did a fairly good job adapting that classic mythological struggle of the hero, the classic story of good versus evil, and he did a fantastic job adapting it into a modern science fiction setting. And that's part of the reason why I enjoy it so much, because it's not even so much science fiction to me, it's science fantasy. And that's why I just absolutely enjoy it. It's escapism. It's a great update of a classic story, and yeah, it's a story that we've all seen multiple times, but it's updated in a way that was new at the time, that still to this day, its influences can be felt. So, I don't take an issue with, the whole recycling of the classic heroes myth there.
Mm-hmm. So you're saying that Star Wars itself is not actually even science fiction?
No. I'd actually say that Star Trek is science fiction. I'd say that Star Wars is science fantasy. Okay. I mean,
so these two movies aren't even in the same genre.
They all fall under speculative fiction. I mean, fantasy, science fiction, horror, these are genres that all kind of get clumped together. But I'd say, good example between Star Wars and Star Trek. there are multiple episodes in Star Trek series and in the movies as well that detail how the warp core works. I mean, it's all speculative future science that is all, at the very best, theoretical in a modern context. But, you know, if you buy into the Star Trek franchise and you sit down and you watch it and they explain, oh yeah, this is how the faster than light engines work. This is how the warp drive operates. And you can go, okay, yeah, sure. They never once explain how the faster-than-light drive works in Star Wars, because it's not important to the story. The engines are just a means to get from point A to point B. It's the story of the journey, not how you get there.
So when Star Wars does it, it's okay, but when Battlefield Earth does it, it's bad cinema. Just saying. I had to take that jab in there real quick. So now, with regards to Star Trek, which actually is science fiction, by the way, so then if one of these is science fiction, one of them is not, then which one is a better piece of science fiction?
I was just assuming we were debating which one's better, not which one is the best science fiction piece.
Fair enough. So, okay. All right. I got you. I smell what you're stepping in. All right. So let's go to a story standpoint then, since that's where we were more or less. One moment. I did not want to cough in anybody's ear. So now you have Star Trek, which, of course, it pretty much does not follow any kind of real fantasy tale. It actually directly translates geopolitical, cultural, racial issues of whatever time period in which it sits.
Sometimes down to the most boring of minutia.
Yeah, I will certainly give you that. But it's had so much of a profound impact on society. Most of our, modern inventors, physicists, things of that nature, the guys in NASA who actually are working on a real warp drive right now. Yeah, they're working on it. Or was that Australia?
It's Australia where the guy is trying to develop a warp drive, yeah.
But all these people were inspired by Star Trek. Star Trek has been the most technologically influential series in the history of mankind because an entire generation grew up with it.
I'm going to throw a flag on that because for all the talk that the tricorder or the communicator invented the cell phone, at the same time, none of these things have cameras attached to them. And if they truly predicted the future, then, Kirk's communicator would have had a goddamn camera for him to take pictures and text to anyone he wanted.
Oh, see, I'm not saying it predicted the future. I'm not saying that at all. I'm saying it inspired people to emulate the technology, to try to say, hey, that's a great idea, but what if it did this? What if it did that? That evolution, it's not – what we have now are not tricorders, but it's inspired by – the technology, by the idea of these devices, these handheld devices that have numerous different handy functions that we can use in almost any situation. And now we have our smartphones and everything of that nature. You had an entire generation of brilliant minds who grew up watching this and were inspired by this. And once they grew up, they in turn began to work on these ideas and to draw from these ideas that they've seen as children, trying to push humanity towards this, granted idealistic utopia that'll probably never happen, but the impetus is there, the idea is there, and the intention is there. So, in that respect, most of I'm not saying we would not have our modern technology were it not for Star Trek. I'm not saying that at all. What I am saying, though, is that it inspired so much of it that we can't really say what we would not have or when we would have gotten it had it not been for it. And, in terms of that translating into the actual quality of the franchise itself, of the fiction itself, it has to be good. It has to be spectacular. It has to be moving and inspiring to propel a generation to action in that fashion.
That's a fair point. I don't necessarily disagree with any of it. But in terms of story is a bit difficult because Star Wars is a film series. It's got a linear story it tells throughout the entirety of the films. Whereas Star Trek primarily episodic television, you'll have story threads that sometimes do span the entirety of a season, or in the case of Deep Space Nine, the entirety of a series. But, you can't say that there's a single Star Trek story if you get my drift. Like, there's,
now, to be fair to Star Wars, it too has flirted with the small screen. Let's not forget the Star Wars Christmas special.
Hey, that is the one thing George Lucas has done that he is personally ashamed of.
Of all the things George Lucas has done, that's what he's ashamed of.
Yes.
I've seen it.
So have I.
Episode 1 was worse. Just saying. At least the Christmas special fucking had B. Arthur.
At least the Christmas special's hilarious because Han Solo's there, but you can kiss Harrison Ford's ass if he's gonna give a shit. Like he's
so it's basically like Ender's Game.
Yeah, he's kind of just. I mean, Harrison Ford's there and he's reading his lines, but you think he's gonna try?
Yeah.
I'm not even gonna defend the holiday special. I'm not even gonna attempt that. No, but at the same time, yeah, Star Wars has that holiday special.
So,
but Star Trek has the original motion picture.
Yes.
Search for Spock. Undiscovered Final Frontier. Generations. Insurrection. And
right. There was a movie called Insurrection, wasn't there?
There was, yes. First Star Trek film I actually saw in theaters. That's not, I know this is a controversial one. I know you like it, but I also know a lot of people hate it. Nemesis.
Okay, but which one of these franchises has had more time combined on actually, let's not even say combined. Let's just say on the silver screen. Star Trek has. So of course there's going to be proportionally
Star Wars actually came first in terms of a film franchise.
No, I said more time as in like running time.
Oh, okay, running time.
As in, number of movies. Okay, you look at Star Wars, for example, and you yourself have said you're not going to attempt to defend the prequel.
Most of the prequels. There are things in the prequels I will defend.
Okay, but now, basically, I know that you're kind of in a minority on defending the prequels. By most fans' account, 50% of the Star Wars series is crap.
Yes.
Now, Star Trek has its share of turds. I will not lie. We all smell them. We know they're there. I'm looking at you, motion picture. Star Trek has its share of turds. But look at how many movies Star Trek has.
But if you're using the 50% rule, though, I mean, there was for the longest time the belief that the odd-numbered ones were terrible and the even-numbered ones were good. So if we're using by what most people assume to be a good Star Trek movie, then, at least for the original run, we're looking at a half-win, half-fail ratio.
Okay, so you're saying you're proposing that the two are a draw, and that no one is superior to the other.
Well, I wouldn't. I wouldn't say that. I actually do in terms of good cinema, because even if we assume that it kind of gets iffy because Nemesis was a even number film. It was the 10th film, but I know a lot of people thought it was terrible. But then you had the odd-numbered film, which was the reboot with J.J. Abrams, and that was good. And then Into Darkness was good. So I would say that the pattern got disrupted there at some point. But for the vast majority of the series, I'd say it's, take one step forward, one step back.
Okay. So you're saying that on the whole, the two are more or less a draw, with possibly, because of the J.J. Abrams reboots, with possibly the favor going to Star Trek.
Yes, but Star Wars is getting its own J.J. Abrams film coming out soon, so that could.
It could, but I mean, we're going with what we've got right now, and they're bringing back the original cast.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I seriously doubt that Mark Hamill, Carrie Fisher, and Harrison Ford will be the primary characters. They're probably just going to be there as supporting to a new cast. I can't see anyone looking at Mark Hamill in the year 2014 and going, yes, you're going to be the star of our action movie.
So we've got, let's kind of take a step back here for a moment, because as we're slugging it out with this, we're bringing things out that I think we need to demonstrate and kind of point out to the audience as a whole.
Okay.
One of these franchises is science fantasy. One of them is science fiction. One of them has been primarily movie based. The other one has been primarily TV based.
And if you want to talk about turds, Voyager.
Definitely. Yeah, no, I'm not denying that. No one likes Voyager. What the fuck? The only good thing fucking Kate Mulgrew's ever done was voice Lilith or whatever the fuck her name was in Dragon Age. But the point here is that, you've got so many ways in which these two franchises are almost incomparable.
Well, it's incomparable, yeah, but, we're geeks, and the whole point is to debate this kind of stuff, so...
Right. No, I get it. So why do you think this compulsion is there to do this?
I'd say that because, despite the fact that if you look at it, you can't really compare it, but at the same time, both... they both take place in space, both involve spaceships, both involve battles, space laser battles between ships. So there are a lot of similarities, and as much as there are differences, there are similarities. And anytime you have a significant number of similarities, the compulsion to compare is going to be there.
Fair enough.
I mean, that's what I would say. But one thing that I think that we can, that I think Star Wars does have an edge over Star Trek, and I think you could say this is the result of Star Wars being a more cinematic creation, a more cinematic franchise, is the fact that Star Wars has, I'd say, the better villains.
It really only has one villain, though.
No, exactly. I'd say that Darth Vader and Emperor Palpatine are better villains than any villain that has ever really graced the screen in Star Trek.
Even better than Khan?
I like Khan. I do. I really like Khan as a villain. But I'd say that Vader and Palpatine both trump him.
Though you gotta keep in mind, though, that's a thing that exists because of the difference in the narrative of the two franchises. You have one which is an Arthurian legend ripoff, and then you have one which tries to portray, the modern geopolitical and cultural climate and translate it into a science fiction environment. And the latter does not really lend itself, in most cases, all that well to great villains. Now, actually, Star Trek-wise, who I really liked as a villain, and you don't hear much about, General Chang.
You mean the guy who makes the chicken at the Chinese restaurants?
No. The, the Undiscovered Country. The dude with the eye patch.
Okay, yeah.
Bolted into his head.
Yes, okay, yes, I know who you're talking about.
I'm just saying, pretty classy villain.
He was a pretty classy villain, but I felt that they were kind of going for a Khan vibe, because whereas Khan would constantly quote Moby Dick, he was constantly quoting Shakespeare.
But you know what? It worked, because it had been so long since Khan, and they did it, and there was enough difference on it to make it work, I think. I mean, that is one of my favorite movies, because it directly mirrored the fall of the Soviet Union and, the West's attempts to cope with it while at the same time keeping kind of one hand with a gun behind our back, ready to go just in case Ivan got froggy. And you had that same thing going on in Undiscovered Country. The Klingon Empire is decades away from shattering. They know they're done. They're forced to capitulate and negotiate with the Federation. But you've got these hardliners on both sides who say, you know what, we're here, let's fucking have at it. And it did such a good job of portraying that climate and that feel in a way that, to me, Now, some may argue that it was heavy-handed. I didn't think it was, but then again, I'm into the geopolitical thing.
I will say I loved Kirk's line where Spock goes, "They're going to die, Jim," and he goes, "Let them die." That was
Let them die. And, that's another thing. Jim Kirk, as a protagonist, has much more depth than Luke Skywalker. Or actually than even Han Solo. Who, let's be fair. Let's compare Jim Kirk to Han Solo, who to me was actually the best thing in the original trilogy.
I'd say that Han Solo and Jim Kirk are more comparable because they're similar. They're similar in a lot of ways. In fact, when Christopher Pine was cast as Kirk in the J.J. Abrams reboot, he specifically said that he was modeling his performance off of a mix of Shatner's Kirk and Ford's Han Solo. So I'd say that they're more comparable than Luke and Kirk are.
Which is another thing I would like to point out. Star Wars would not exist without Star Trek.
Yeah,
now,
it goes both ways. The Star Trek film series only kind of got going. The Star Trek film series only got going because Star Wars was such a huge hit at the box office.
Right. No, I totally get and 2001: A Space Odyssey, because that was what Star Trek the Motion Picture tried to emulate and failed miserably. I'll be honest to the fans, I have yet to be able to sit through Star Trek the Motion Picture all the way through.
I have. You don't miss much.
And I'm about as diehard of a Trek fan as you can get and remain this side of sane. But I can't bring myself to do it. Granted, I have a lot of vices. I drink like a fish, smoke like a chimney, and, but I cannot hate myself enough. There is not enough capability for self-loathing within my heart to bring myself to watch Star Trek the Motion Picture all the way through.
Mm-hmm.
But that being said, yes, the Star Trek movie franchise does owe at least in part to the success of Star Wars. But Star Wars itself would not have even existed were it not for the original television series. So even if Star Wars had not existed at all, there still would be the original series. Now, granted, would it have ever become the phenomenon that it has? Most likely not, though recently with this wave of Hollywood forgetting how to do anything remotely original, it probably would have been brought back at some point within the last 10 years anyways, somehow.
Mm-hmm.
But, Lucas himself admittedly drew a lot of inspiration from Star Trek.
How so?
Now, you just said Han. Or did you say Harrison Ford drew his portrayal of Han Solo from Jim Kirk partly?
No. I said Chris Pine drew part of his inspiration for New Kirk from
Chris
Han
Pine.
Solo.
Okay, I got you. I'm sorry, I misheard that.
Yeah, no. All I'm saying is that if in terms of comparing protagonists, I'd say that Han Solo and Jim Kirk are more comparable than Jim Kirk and Luke Skywalker.
Okay, I got you. Okay, then I withdraw that statement. Which brings me to something else. Luke Skywalker, as a protagonist, is flat and uncompelling.
I was a big Luke Skywalker fan when I was little.
Okay, but now, what do you think?
I think Luke Skywalker is what he is. He is the modern day Arthurian hero. I know that going back with the advent of the prequel trilogy, George Lucas has tried to say, "Oh no, the whole thing is Darth Vader's story." That's bullshit.
Is Luke Skywalker a compelling protagonist? Don't wait for the translation. Answer the question.
I'd say yes, he is, because He is, because despite the fact that he does kind of come off as sort of generic McHero, there is enough of a change in him where he just avoids becoming boring. He's kind of this uneducated farm boy in the first film, but he's a great pilot. So he has that one skill, and he uses that skill to save the day. By Empire Strikes Back, he's more worldly. He's engaged in the Rebel Alliance. He knows more, and he's really eager to complete his Jedi training. But he's still young. He's still hot-headed. He jumps out on his training early to try to get Han and Leia back in a move that everyone tells him is a trap, and he knows it's a trap, but he's he's hot-headed, but he's still noble, so he still wants to save the day, and he gets into a lightsaber duel with Vader that he is really unprepared. Like, if you watch the lightsaber duel from Empire Strikes Back, Vader is toying with him. Like, Luke is so out of his league there.
Okay, I get you.
But my point is, then we get to Return of the Jedi.
Okay.
We get to Return of the Jedi. And by that point, in Return of the Jedi, he's completed his training. He is a fully realized Jedi. He is more calm. He puts together that scheme to free Han and Leia from Jabba the Hutt. It's a well-orchestrated plan. He's obviously put a lot of thought into it. He's not rushing it headstrong. And then he keeps up. He's calm. He's cool. He knows his stuff. And he only really starts to break at the end when Vader goes, you know, if I can't turn you, maybe I'll go after your sister. And at that point, he just loses his shit completely. And he starts wailing on Vader. And then it's a very emotional scene because for the first times in that movie, you see Luke as not this calm and cool, collected Jedi. You see him as this really pissed off motherfucker who just wants to end Vader once Vader threatens his sister. And then once we have that, you know, Luke is about to finish off Vader. He's about to kill Vader, and Palpatine is like, yes, good, give in to your hatred. Join me on the dark side. And it's at that point when Luke realizes that if he kills Vader, he is essentially no better than his father, and he makes the sacrifice to say no to Palpatine. And so, yeah, and at times Luke comes off as the generic, you know, fantasy hero, but there's enough of a character arc there between the three movies where he doesn't stay static. He's constantly changing. His outlook is constantly evolving.
Okay, the thing is, most of what you're telling me here is the story of how an incompetent farm boy grows up to become competent. But very little of what you're actually saying demonstrates any interesting character growth, aside from the part that you're talking about at the end, where he wigs out and wants to, you know, end this nonsense once and for all and wax Vader. But he doesn't even have the balls to do that before turning back into a generic Mary Sue again.
Well, the point is, though, that it's not that he didn't have the balls to kill Vader, it's that it comes back to Vader's story. Vader was a promising Jedi who gave into temptation and did some really bad crap and became a Sith. And so it's Luke kind of coming to terms with that. He realizes that he's about to make the same mistake that his father made.
I wouldn't call someone who wanted to blow up entire worlds and who did blow up an entire world, I wouldn't call killing someone who did that a mistake. And let's just put forth for the record, Jim Kirk has the courage of conviction and the chutzpah to fucking put a phaser blast through Vader's head.
To be fair, I don't think we can blame the destruction of Alderaan on Vader. That was Grand Moff Tarkin.
Okay.
I'm just saying, if Vader was put on trial, he'd say Grand Moff Tarkin was the one who gave the order to blow up Alderaan.
So now you're saying that just following orders is a defense. I think the phone's ringing, Mike. I think your phone's ringing. I think it's irony.
I'm saying that Vader was in a very dark spot at that point in his life.
He was just following orders.
Hey. Jar Jar Binks was on Alderaan when it blew up, so I can't consider it a complete tragedy.
Just following orders.
But I want to talk a bit about, you know, we've been defending plot, we've been defending villains, we've been defending protagonists, we've been defending the good parts. Let's talk about the respective parts of our respective franchises that we're both ashamed of. The parts where you kind of go, the parts that even we can't defend. I'll start. Jar Jar Binks is an abomination.
That's not a very good job of defending.
No, I'm not defending it. I'm saying we're not going to defend. I'm saying we can't defend it, but we're going to talk about it. So let's talk.
I got you.
Let's talk about the less positive aspects of these franchises and see how they stack up when we compare the stinkers. And I'm going to say Jar Jar Binks was an abomination. George Lucas reportedly developed the character while playing with his very young son.
Oh.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm sorry that did not lead to where
such a build up and such a letdown. I was just about to scream, I knew it! I knew it! I rest my fucking case!
But, no. He's playing with his kid, and they developed the Jar Jar Binks character, and Lucas was like, hey, this thing is popular with my kid. I bet it's gonna be popular with all the kids. And so Jar Jar Binks is a shameless attempt for kid appeal. And I'll go back to an argument you've used with the likes of Transformers. Star Wars is a series about laser sword wielding space knights and spaceships shooting lasers at each other. You don't need something specifically for the kid appeal. The kid appeal is inherent in the concept. Right,
exactly.
But yeah, so Jar Jar Binks is an abomination, but here's where I'll say that Jar Jar Binks is better than, is more tolerable than, Wesley Crusher. When audiences let George Lucas know that they hated Jar Jar Binks, he got scaled back significantly. He's a main character in Phantom Menace. By Attack of the Clones, he only has a few speaking lines. By Revenge of the Sith, he's basically a background character. He has no lines. With Wesley Crusher, they kept him around season after season after season.
They kept him around, but they had fewer episodes that focused on him.
I guess, but by that point, his irritant, a friend of mine, another Star Trek fan, I asked him about Wesley Crusher, and he said, Will Wheaton seems like a cool guy, but I would throw Wesley Crusher out of an airlock just to watch him die.
I would too. And, so would Jim Kirk.
Yeah. There's no way that they could have gotten away with Wesley Crusher in the original series, because Kirk would have, kicked his ass up.
It would have been the first Trek movie to be rated R when Kirk said, Wesley, shut the fuck up. But, Wesley Crusher, a complete fucking turd in the bowl. Star Trek Voyager, that entire series is more or less a write-off, even though it did kind of have an interesting premise to it.
It has a very interesting premise, but I'll say that interesting premise was delivered by Battlestar Galactica a lot better than Voyager ever did.
Yeah, and, who's to say that if they'd gotten Edward James Olmos to play the captain of the Voyager, maybe it would have been better. Maybe not, though, because it still would have been written by the same people. Admiral
Adama captaining Voyager would have been interesting. We would have had a lot more scenes of Neelix being bludgeoned with a flashlight.
I actually did not find Neelix to be all that offensive.
I've heard a variety of opinions. I've heard some people say that Neelix is an absolute blight on the franchise. I've heard some people say, I understand why people don't like Neelix, but I like him. And then you, who doesn't mind him at all. So Neelix seems to be an interesting character. I wouldn't even say that Neelix is in the Jar Jar Binks or Wesley Crusher zone, because it's almost unanimous that Binks and Crusher are terrible, but with Neelix it seems, depending on who you talk to, he's either terrible or he's awesome or he's somewhere in between. Neelix gets a wide array of reactions.
Yeah. Let's see. What other blemishes does Star Trek have?
Star Trek 5.
Star Trek 5.
Where they meet God.
And, if they'd gone with the original idea for that, it would have been a lot cooler.
By all accounts, Shatner really overextended himself. He wanted ILM to do the special effects, but Indiana Jones 3 was happening, so ILM was working on that. he wanted Sean Connery to play the villain. Sean Connery was doing Indiana Jones 3. So, George Lucas was indirectly screwing up Star Trek 5.
So I throw flag this time, and I call it interference because, what could have been a pretty damn good movie. The original plot was basically the U.S. Enterprise versus Satan, was it not?
The original plot was that Kirk was going to go to the center of the galaxy to find God, but he'd find Satan instead.
And you know what? I want to see that movie right the fuck now.
Like, it would have, and I'm not talking about, like, a metaphor for Satan. No. The original story was the Enterprise gets into a fight with the devil. The actual devil.
Yeah, I would have loved to have fucking seen that shit. That would have been epic. Would have loved it. Instead, we got something that fell way short. We have, bless her heart, a mid to late 50s Nichelle Nichols doing a nudie dance in the moonlight in a desert.
That was nuts. Someone should have put their foot down on that.
Yeah, I just, no. I mean, as far as something like that can be done, it was done, quote unquote, tastefully, but it was bad. That entire movie was pretty bad. It does have its interesting moments. I like the actual concept of them finding some kind of semi-omnipotent being, in the center of the galaxy or whatever. I really do like that concept.
Says the Mormon.
I am not. My mother was. It's not like you guys who it's like a hereditary thing. Mormons are not a race. You can opt out.
No, and yes, you have. I apologize for the low blow. It was low hanging fruit, and I fell for it.
Yeah. But yeah, so I mean, I do find the concept to be interesting that you do find some form of omnipotent or semi-omnipotent being in the center of the galaxy. It was everything really leading up to that point that I had a problem with that. It's like it drug on forever, almost to Star Trek the Motion Picture levels of dragging on. And then it gets kind of interesting there at the end, but it's just at the very end.
Well, apparently, they tried to marry two concepts that just wouldn't work together. What Shatner's original vision was, Kirk, the Enterprise versus Satan. It was going to be an examination of Kirk and his relationship with his crew. It was going to be a very serious piece. Except that Star Trek 4, which was the highest grossing Star Trek film of all time, had a lot of comedic elements to it. So when he greenlit Star Trek 5, they told Shatner, we want comedy. So Shatner kind of had to marry this concept of a deep examination of Kirk and his crew and, the Enterprise fighting the devil with, slapstick humor.
Yeah, and, it of course did not go well.
But on top of Star Trek 5, I raise Insurrection.
Yeah, I was actually just about to do that myself. Star Trek Insurrection, though, I wouldn't call it a blight. I wouldn't call it a steaming pile of shit. Because a blight or a steaming pile of shit are things that you remember.
Mm-hmm.
Star Trek Insurrection was, I believe you once compared it to a fart. It happened, it was mildly unpleasant, and then you forgot about it afterwards.
Yeah.
I went to see Star Trek Insurrection with my mother at the time, and this was in the theater, of course, and we come out, we get in the truck, and we're pulling out of the movie theater, and I said, so, that was okay, I guess. And she's like, yeah, I liked it.
Did she really?
No, she said that kind of half-hearted voice or whatever because she refused to admit that a Star Trek movie was bad. But, we never got it on VHS or DVD or anything like that, and probably never will unless I just get this OCD thing about collecting them all. It's one of those things, and you keep waiting forever, and nothing really happens. And the plot itself is just butt-fucked retarded because the bad guy is actually the good guy. He's saying, hey, this planet makes you immortal. We can study this. We can learn from this. We can cure every fucking disease that we know of. And no, you can't do that because there's like a few people who live here.
300 people.
Yeah.
Against
people.
the trillions of people that could benefit.
And, why, and do they, I don't recall, my memory of this movie is that fuzzy. It's so forgettable. I don't think they ever even really do a good job of explaining why these people would even have to be displaced to conduct these studies.
They say that the thing about the planet that has this miraculous healing power is the rings of the planet, and to study the rings would apparently kill everyone who's inhabiting the planet. It's a contrived reason, but they do give you one.
Yeah, and that makes no sense at all. So,
But my opinion on that, though, is I believe even Star Trek itself has a line for this type of scenario. The needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few.
Yeah, exactly. And they totally did not adhere to that. Instead, you get, this, I guess what's supposed to be maybe a Native American analog.
It was a Native American analog, but then they made the Native American stand-ins all white people.
Right, yeah. Diversity, doing it right. Yeah, so you have this, and then you've got the shitty Native American analog. You've got an antagonist who actually wants to
help
save everyone. Right? Yeah. How dare you, you arrogant bastard? It just sucked. It was again not a steaming turd or anything like that. It's one of those things that you just kind of see and you're like, whatever. And you kind of go on and you forget about it not long after you've seen it. There was nothing at all really remarkable going on with that movie.
Now, before we wrap this up, I do want to touch on the topic that I've been dancing around, the prequels of Star Wars, the Star Wars prequel trilogy, episodes 1 through 3. I cannot defend these on the whole, but there are things that I will defend within them. I'd say that the core story concept has promise. It was they just dropped the ball entirely on execution. Darth Maul was pretty cool. I liked him when I saw him. Of course, I was like 11 at the time, so target marketing and all that. But the one thing I will say, I won't even say he saves the prequels because he really doesn't. But Palpatine is the one shining beacon in that trilogy, because he is so openly evil, and he so enjoys being evil that you just can't help but smile when he's scheming on screen.
Yeah, and they actually got the same guy to play Palpatine again, did they not? Except this time they didn't have to give him any makeup.
Well, it was funny because when they were interviewing him, and he said, when I did Return of the Jedi, I was a young man that they were trying to make look old. And he said, now I'm an old man and they're trying to make me look young. Because at least in the original one, Palpatine's supposed to be pretty young in episode 1.
Right.
So they do give him some makeup to make him look younger. But in episodes 2 and 3, they don't give him any makeup, until the ending. But yeah, he looks his age. For the first time in the series, he actually looks his age. In episodes 2 and 3. Which was kind of interesting. But, okay. I have to think that he knew, that he knew that these films were garbage. Because he goes, ultimate power! You just knew that he was like, oh God, this is...
Would you like some gravy with your ham, sir?
He's just like, oh God, this script is terrible. You know what? I'm just gonna have fun.
Just fuck it. Fuck it. We'll do it live.
Exactly.
Palpatine's performance in the prequels was pretty good. He really comes across, in spite of the hand-fisting, Giddy, he really comes across as being the only fucker there who has any goddamn clue what's going on.
He doesn't even really try so hard he doesn't even really try hard to pull like the wool over the Jedi's eyes. Like if you actually look at the plot for the prequel trilogy, you have to wonder how the hell did the Jedi not see this coming? And the actor's name is Ian McDiarmid. Excellent job playing Palpatine. He really kind of got the sense that these movies were not going to be that great, and he just had fun with the role. But if you look, like, I mean, the whole point is that Palpatine is supposed to be clouding the Jedi's vision so that he can pull these strings without the Jedi knowing that he's the Sith Lord. But, I mean, god damn it, Yoda's got to be one incompetent motherfucker. There's at least, like, 3 scenes of him in Palpatine's office talking to the dude. Not once did he get a tingling from the Force that maybe Palpy wasn't above board.
Yeah. I mean, the guy's sitting there in a fucking black robe with a fucking hood draped over his head practically. Like, black clouds of evil coming off of his body.
Yeah.
Yoda's like, straight shooter he is. Good negotiation it was.
Yeah,
Walks out, gets him a fucking burrito and heads home. The fuck?
And then there's this Palpatine sitting there. Jackass.
Yeah, pretty much.
But there's a great scene actually. It's at the end of episode 1. Darth Maul has been killed. Darth Maul being Palpatine's first apprentice. Darth Maul is killed by Obi-Wan. And the Jedi had thought that the Sith to be extinct. So they're surprised when Darth Maul starts, fucking shit up. And at Qui-Gon Jinn's funeral, Mace Windu and Yoda are talking. And Mace Windu goes like, we didn't see the Sith coming back. And Yoda goes, but there's always 2, a master and an apprentice. And then Windu goes, but which one was killed, the master or the apprentice? And then the camera zooms in on Palpatine and basically goes the da da da. I mean, yeah. It's amazing to watch because it's like, who is the mystery Sith pulling the strings? Zoom in on Palpatine. It was me the whole time.
God in Himmel 9, who would have thought it? This cannot be. Impossible.
But going to things I can't defend in the prequel trilogy, and I don't want to get too far into this because, Red Letter Media did a review of each one, a 3-hour review of each prequel trilogy. They're actually longer than the films themselves. And I can't say anything that those haven't said, so I'm just going to touch on the key points that I felt were particularly egregious. 1, Samuel L. Jackson.
Mm-hmm.
I love Samuel L. Jackson. He was the saving grace of RoboCop. He's awesome in Pulp Fiction. He's a great actor. But his style is, well, he screams motherfucker a lot. He's intense. And he beats bitches down. And George Lucas casts him to play a quiet, reserved Jedi Knight.
Yeah. I mean, you get Samuel L. Jackson for your film, and then you don't let him do any of the things that Samuel L. Jackson does. Okay, it's a family film. You don't want him going around screaming, I'm sick and tired of these motherfucking Sith in my motherfucking Senate.
That would have made the movie immensely better.
It would have. It would have. But, I mean, I can get from a marketing standpoint why that may be not what you want. But at least let him be more of the hawkish Jedi. At least let him be the one saying, look, we need to go kick their asses now. And then show him kind of enjoying a little bit, fighting, these Sith and taking the conflict to them and all that shit. At least show that give him that aggressive edge that you would at least expect and let him play with that a little bit.
I was waiting for, when he, at the end of episode 3, when Mace Windu, Jackson's character, when he corners Palpatine and he finally disarms Palpatine and Palpatine's like kind of kneeling in a corner, I was almost expecting him to be like, they speak English and what, motherfucker? English, motherfucker, do you speak it? So it's like, it's it's like you're waiting for Samuel L. Jackson to be this intense ass-kicking Jedi, and he isn't really. And, you know, I had heard a rumor that role was originally offered to David Duchovny, but he turned it down to be in the movie Evolution, which I can't blame him, because Evolution was just great.
Yeah, it was.
On so many levels.
Very underrated film.
Very underrated. It probably didn't get Duchovny a lot of mainstream recognition, but damn it if it wasn't the superior film to any of the Star Wars prequels, so.
Yeah, agreed.
So Mace Windu, you know, Samuel L. Jackson, waste of a cast member. We covered Jar Jar Binks. Another big thing that I felt really hamstrung the prequels was the need to include the droids, C-3PO and R2-D2. And I get why Lucas did it. He wants as much of a continuity between the two trilogies as possible so that you could theoretically watch them in numerical order and see, oh, these characters have been here since the beginning. The problem is that it just seems so contrived that when you stop to think about it, that the prequel trilogy probably would have been stronger if they didn't feel the need to put C-3PO and R2-D2 in there.
Yeah, that was one of the many mistakes that were made, yes.
And it goes back to my Obi-Wan Kenobi by the original trilogy has heat stroke because, you know, Luke finally tracks him down and he goes, this droid here, he points to R2-D2, says he belongs to you. And Obi-Wan goes, I don't ever remember owning a droid. Well, according to the prequel trilogy, you palled around with this exact droid for over a decade. What exactly have you been doing out here in the desert for the past, 20 years? Has the heat really gotten to you, Ben? Because it seems like the heat's gotten to you.
Yeah.
And I don't know, I don't know if he was just being coy, but it's one of those unintentionally hilarious things where he's just like, I don't remember this droid at all. Ben? Yeah, you should probably remember this droid.
Though, I will say this. No Star Trek movie has been so bad that it pretty much ruined the life of someone who played in it and made them give up acting. As was the case, the poor little bastard who played young Anakin.
Oh, yes. Oh, that kid. What is his name?
I don't know, but as a result, I mean, he got so much fucking hate.
He's done some interviews. I'm pulling up the name right now. But if you ever get a chance, listeners, look at this guy's interviews he's on YouTube, and you can feel sorry for him. I mean, the initial impression you get after seeing Phantom Menace is to be like, oh, fuck that kid, he's terrible. But you listen to the shit that has got sorry for the guy.
Oh yeah, He grew up with some shit because of it. We'll just put it that way. He's retired from acting. He wants nothing to do with it.
Jake Lloyd.
That's right. Yeah. He wants nothing to do with acting. He sure as fuck doesn't want anything to do with Star Wars anymore. And any interview that you see with him is most likely going to turn a little bit hostile.
There's one he was talking about. He was in college. And, a friend of his said, oh, hey, Jake, there's this girl I want to hook you up with. Come on over to my place. I'll hook you up with her. So he's like, okay, fine. So he goes over to his friend's house later that evening. And the girl is there. But just as the evening's getting started, his friend's like, hey, let's watch Star Wars Episode 1.
Ouch.
Yeah. And oh man, no. It's like, part of me wishes that Jake Lloyd was a little bit more Will Wheaton about it and just sort of embraced it and be like, yeah, it was terrible. I sucked. But at the same time, I can't blame the guy for being bitter.
No.
I mean, apparently, kids would make lightsaber sounds every time he entered the room growing up. I mean, that's gotta be rough. And especially, teachers who all grew up with the original trilogy and loved the original Star Wars movies probably hated them.
I hate you.
It's like, I just imagine Jake Lloyd, like, he's in high school, he gets beat up, and then he goes to, he goes like a teacher or something, and the teacher just kind of looks at him and goes, why don't you try spinning? Well, that's a good trick.
Lol.
I mean,
gets back his fucking history paper, fucking scrawled and read across, fuck you, Anakin.
You raped my childhood. So, yeah, I mean, it hasn't done that. Will Wheaton has said that he's not overly fond about his time on Star Trek, but, it didn't ruin his life.
No.
And I think the big problem with Wesley Crusher was that, Wesley Crusher was he was basically Gene's avatar. He was made to represent Gene Roddenberry. He was the creator, avatar, as it were. And young Anakin really wasn't that. Jar Jar Binks really wasn't that. Those are just shitty ideas on Lucas's part. Although I would say that Lucas and Roddenberry have a lot in common.
Yeah, they do. They both created something brilliant, and then in their later years took a big steaming hate shit all over it.
Gene Roddenberry's, kind of turned to communism in his later years, kind of presented the early years of TNG are kind of filled with, well, I'll just say it, it's communist ideological propaganda.
Yeah, that's a fair assessment.
And, it gets very heavy-handed at times, but thankfully, I really don't want to say it this way because it sounds like, I'm not saying it's a good thing that Gene Roddenberry died. I am saying that when he passed away, the creative direction of TNG got much better.
Yeah, it did.
And that's kind of where I'm looking at for the future of Star Wars, because, Lucas, he's not dead, but he sold the rights to his creation. So you have people who aren't George Lucas writing Star Wars, and history has shown that when George Lucas doesn't write Star Wars, it's actually pretty good. For example, Lucas didn't write the script to Empire Strikes Back, and that's considered the best one.
I actually did not like it. I liked Jedi better.
Well, yes, because you were ideologically opposed to the bad guys winning.
Well, yeah.
But it's part of the story that the bad guys have to win in the middle so the good guys can win later on.
Oh, I get it. Just as a standalone segment, though, I don't. I mean, if it had been, 1 4-hour movie and the last half be Jedi, then okay. But as a standalone segment, I didn't care for it because fuck you, that's why.
But, I don't think, like I said at the beginning of the segment, Jack here, he does like Star Wars. He likes aspects of Star Wars. I like Star Trek more or less. There are a few installments I don't care for, but I do care for it. I do like it overall. So, neither one of us are coming at this from a vicious perspective, but, I think we covered all the main points. I know some Star Trek fans are saying, well, what about Enterprise? Wasn't that a stinker?
I loved Enterprise myself.
Yeah,
actually. Enterprise
gets a lot of hate from a lot of people, but Jack and I actually agree on that one. I really like Enterprise in its entirety. I admit it got better. Like, the last 2 seasons were significantly better than the first 2 seasons, but I still don't hate the first 2 seasons either. I still like the first 2 seasons of Enterprise. So, yeah. I mean, Archer is kind of funny in a crazy sense. Like, if you look at it the right way, Archer's kind of a nutcase, but at the same time, I like Enterprise, so.
Yeah, and also, coming off of Voyager, goddamn. You didn't have a very high bar to lift yourself above, but, I mean, even on its own, I thought Enterprise was pretty good. And, both Mike and myself, we are fans to one degree or another of both franchises. We just basically, for the sake of this debate, we chose the one that we thought was better, and, we assumed sides accordingly. What I would say kind of in closing is, Siths, Jedis, Trekkies, and Trekkers, let's stop. Mm-hmm. Let's just stop the madness. Stop the insanity.
We all like spaceships. We all like lasers. So
we all like hot alien bitches. Let's combine. Let's get together and address the real threat.
What's the real?
Stephanie Meyer and Twilight. Let's focus our hatred. Let's stop turning it against each other. Let's take back our fiction.
Yeah, because
take back our fiction from crazy, directors and writers who want to do bold new things and blah blah blah, and then just end up fucking it in the ass. Let's take it back from this namby-pamby emo fiction that's coming out these days.
Let's take it back. Let's take vampires back. That's what I want.
God damn it, yes. Let's take vampires back.
I know 30 Days of Night tried, and that was a great effort, but it just did not get enough mainstream traction. Someone's got to write an old school vampire movie before Twilight just encompasses the entire genre. Because god damn it, I read the original Dracula book, and that is a creepy ass book, and then Twilight comes around, and now you can't even say I like vampire fiction without someone snickering at you. It's time to take it back. Nerds of the world unite and take back what is ours.
Yeah, and we're getting things shat on. I mean, Marvel is shitting on, Marvel's already shat on Iron Man. Yeah, there's not going to be an episode where we don't bring that up. Just get used to it. Lucas shat on Star Wars. Roddenberry shat on Star Trek. Now J.J. Abrams will hopefully, redeem both of them, as he's done with Star Trek. But
yeah, that's another thing. I know some people don't like the Abrams reboots, but both Jack and I did, so we decided to leave those alone.
And the thing is, Mike and I, for the most part, usually agree on one thing when it comes to our fiction and our franchises: change is bad. We generally agree on that. And, neither of us went into this Star Trek reboot franchise being like, thinking, okay, this is going to be awesome. It's going to be different and fresh and herk-a-dirt. No, we went into it kind of like bracing ourselves for it to suck. And we both came out of it just fucking blown away.
Mm-hmm.
I don't see the, do the movies have problems and the occasional plot hole and whatever? Yeah, they do. What movie fucking doesn't? Just shut the fuck up and watch the goddamn movie they give you.
Mm-hmm.
And they were good.
Yeah, no, they were. Obviously, the prequels, lots of prequels in Star Wars, lots of problems there. Voyager, some of the movies in Star Trek, problems there.
Yeah.
But, hopefully things get better. Both those franchises they already have for Star Trek. Hopefully they will for Star Wars. And hopefully we can bring you a couple more of these debates later on. I know Kirk vs. Picard might be something we want to do at a later point. I don't want to commit to saying next week, but Kirk vs. Picard will happen at a later date. And at a later date, again, I don't want to commit to next week, but at some point we are going to talk about the third party in the room, the third person in the room at the party between Star Wars and Star Trek, and that is Battlestar Galactica, because that is a show that had a tremendous impact on science fiction. At least the new version, the 2004 reboot did. And that's something that I think we would like to address at some point, so.
Definitely. BSG does not get enough love.
So, for Jack, this has been Mike, and this has been episode 6 of Basically a Geek Show. Check us out on YouTube. Email us at basicallyageekshow@gmail.com. Check us out on iTunes, Stitcher, Podomatic, and Spreaker. Good night, everyone.